Hey, we're back for another Parent Pivot podcast. Hi, sweetie.
Hi,
You're one of the co-hosts. What's your name?
I'm Julia Cummings.
I'm Steve Cummings and stuff.
And stuff.
But hey, so welcome to the Parent Pivot podcast where we like to come at you with some new material. And we actually have some new material. Before we get to that, though, I'm going to throw something out there. You remember back when we were like in college, there was a popular movie called The Karate Kid.
Yes, and they've made a remake of that.
They made a remake of that and stuff. And it's just about a guy named Ralph Macchio.
Well, that's the actor's name.
That's the actor.
I don't know what the kid's name was in the movie.
Yeah. But anyway, so I was thinking about that recently because I belong to this F3 thing where we work out, and there's a 19-year-old kid there that's a karate instructor, and his F3 name is Miyagi.
Oh, funny.
And so I've had Miyagi on the mind and stuff. So anyway, we had something happen to us this last weekend, and that thing came back up again.
Yeah. We mentioned it last week on the podcast that we were going to be speaking at a workshop at a local church. And so we did our thing, and then there was question and answers. And one of the people, I loved her response to things, but she's asking the question of, what if you're, and she didn't word it this way. I'm going to word it this way.
And she gave us permission to tell the story.
Yes.
So if you're listening out there,
I did ask
this one's for you.
For permission. But she basically said, what if your kids have really screwed up enough that it's really costing you financially?
Yeah.
So those are the parents we're speaking to right now.
Yep.
That have adult children who don't live at home or do live at home, who have done something big, like
maybe you bought them a car.
Yeah, maybe they smashed a car. Maybe they
somehow you gave them money. You've been trying to help them to grow up and launch, and it just kind of backfired.
Right. So there's a loss financially. Maybe they ended up in jail and you had to bail them out.
Yeah, that too.
So there are lots and lots of things.
Yeah, and we're talking someone in their late 20s, early 30s.
Right. So
still single.
So the question is, let's say you have an adult child that's cost you a boatload of money. One of the things we talk about all the time, that we're always trying to keep the peace. We're trying to talk about ownership. We're talking about, being quiet and not giving advice and yada, yada, yada. We're talking about this. So we have to shift our talking at this point to when your adult child, has cost you a boatload of money that maybe you don't even have. What do you do then? Right,
because the question we were entertaining at the time is, how generous do you be as a parent to your adult children?
Right.
And things. And so this was specifically a story about a young man in his early 30s, and that something like that had happened.
Right. So her response was, I made my son sit down. And I can't remember what the verse was. Do you remember what
it was in Hebrews?
Something in Hebrews. And she made him write it 100 times.
Yeah.
And
we all laughed when she said that.
We all laughed. But she said how she put it was, I just went all Miyagi on him.
Yeah.
Because her whole thing was, when your kid messes up like that, sorry, I don't have to be nice anymore, really. What I've got to do is teach this adult child something.
I would guess to call that some good, tough love.
Yeah. And she
said, I Miyagi'd him.
Right. And I would say there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that it is appropriate. I think, if your child's been thrown in jail or they've crashed a car or whatever, and it's cost you a lot of money, you don't have to yell at them and scream at them, but you can teach them through discipline.
But what I loved about her story, though, that she looked back on raising him, and she said, I wasn't the mom I could have been. So she owned her mistakes.
Right. She was a single young mom.
Right. She owned her mistakes, which was great.
Yeah.
And she she sat down and told them why she was doing what she was doing.
Right.
Which is what we were telling the adult parents to do. Is like, hey, you can't just make a decision arbitrarily and just do it and say, well, that's because I'm mom or I'm dad. And we had shared some examples where, we had sat, one of our children down and they ask a question. You're telling them the why beneath the what. You're being transparent.
Right.
To share the situation.
Yeah.
she was looking back at the past and going, you know what, I blew it as a mom. I should have been, I would say, are tougher on you, or like, more accountable to you.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, but now we're going to. And so she
Right.
gave him that exercise of writing that verse out 100 times.
But I loved, we talked about this that day. I love the fact that she said to him, I wasn't the mom you needed when I was younger and you were younger.
Yep.
I believe she was a teenage mom. And so she's going into it just not knowing anything, really, but wanting to have her child care for him, take care of him, but not really having probably her own discipline, probably needed to grow up herself in so many ways. And so to be the age that she is now and to be able to say, you know what, I did you wrong because I wasn't the mom you needed at the time to discipline you and do all those things that needed to be done.
And if I remember correctly, something came up later that he was not excited, but that verse that he had to write 100 times came into play.
Yes. And I think he came back and said to her at some point that he really missed the discipline of being with her.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really sweet. But she also did things like made him cut the grass, and maybe this was another parent saying this, but that they made them work off basically what cost them. And I think that's great. I know when I was a teenager, now this is kind of different. I wasn't being careless.
Were you Miyagi'd by your sweet mother?
No, I was not. No. But
I can't imagine that.
First time I ever drove by myself when I was 16, I hit a parked car.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out, being married to you for 37 years. How does that happen?
I panicked and I meant to slam on my brakes and I slammed on the accelerator instead.
Okay.
And that car just moved and went over a curb, and it was I can look at it now and laugh, but at the time I cried.
Yeah, but you were 16 though. You weren't an adult.
No, but my point is, my dad was very kind to me. First of all, he was relieved that that's all it was, because all he knew was his teenage daughter was moping around the house crying all the time. And his fear was, oh my gosh, is my daughter pregnant? Something awful's happened. So to him, it was like, oh, whatever. So he made a contract with me, and I had to pay off what he paid to fix that car. It's a brand new Buick Regal. And, back in 1978, that was, an expensive car. Anyway, so I took years and paid him off, $25 a month, I think it was at the time. And, but again, it's learning that discipline of this is my responsibility. Right. I did something.
There's consequences for your actions.
There are consequences, and I am the one that needs to take care of it.
And I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here, because we talked about this at our workshop.
Yeah.
And you got very animated about this, because we asked the question about, why do parents think they have to buy their kids a car to go to college or something?
Well, I hear parents all the time talk about all the responsibility is on them to get their child a car.
Right.
And I've just never really understood that. And part of that is because the family I grew up in, my parents did not buy us cars.
I didn't have that happen either.
They did not feel like that was their job. I had to save for that. They did let me use their car when it was available. And so I did do that. But it was my responsibility to buy the car. But I can tell you, if I polled 9 out of 10 parents of 16 and older, the parents think it's their job to get their kid a car. It's across the board.
Right.
And I'm always floored at that. Also, and I think we've talked about this before, kids going to college, that kids take out loans, and I see parents
paying the loans
off well into their 60s and 70s, and they feel that responsibility. And I think that there probably needs to be some rethinking about those big ticket items and teaching your children, maybe you don't get to go to the school that is the easiest. Maybe you go to a junior college for 2 years. Maybe we do the state school or whatever.
Which is what I had to do. I got accepted to go to USC and couldn't afford it because we weren't rich enough to pay the tuition and weren't poor enough to get the scholarships.
Right.
And my parents didn't money. So I paid my way by working 40 to 48 hours a week in the grocery industry, paying for my car, paying for my car insurance, even moved out and had an apartment for the first semester until I realized, hey, you know what? This isn't working right now. I'm spending too much money here. I'll just commute from home. And I lived in San Clemente. If you know where that is on the map, shout out to you folks. And by the way, the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks quarterback, Sam Darnold, is not only a San Clemente Triton, woohoo, but he's also a Trojan. Little side note, no extra charge for that one. But where was I going with that?
Just that you put yourself through college.
Yeah.
And you lived at home in order to be able to afford it.
Right. Yeah. And so we're not here to bag on you if you're paying your kids' way through school.
No, that's not the point.
That's not the point of this. The point of this is to just keep an eye on how generous you're being and what kind of response you're getting from your kids on that. Right. Because we have adult children living with us in our home, but here's the thing. They're working their butts off.
Yeah.
They say thank you every single time. Tonight we helped Jamie Lynn, who wasn't feeling well. She's 6 months pregnant.
Yep.
6 months pregnant. She's sitting there halfway through dinner just going, I don't feel good. And you jumped in and helped with the meat, and I ended up slicing cheese.
Right. And she and Taylor stood there, and as Taylor's walking out the door to go to work, and said, imagine if we didn't have mom and dad here to help out. What would I be doing right now?
Right. And I said, well, that's how we do it on the homestead. I keep calling our property the homestead because we're enjoying this. But the point is, our kids aren't entitled.
Yeah.
They don't expect it. And even like we went today to go shopping for tennis shoes and we got 2 Cinnabons. Had every intention of eating my Cinnabon. I thought, you know what? My pregnant daughter is going to love this more than I will. Yeah. And so I gave it to her.
Yeah.
And she did. But anyway, so generosity. I mean, this whole thing started with generosity. The pendulum can swing too far to
one way or the other.
One way or the other. We're either too generous or too stingy.
Yeah, I guess that's the word you might want to use.
But the key is communicating well with your adult child, like this mom did.
Yeah.
And explaining why. Here's who I was. I did you a misservice back then. She didn't say it was tough love, and then she looked at her son and she looked him in the eyes and she saw his heart. And it's really about communicating and being honest and owning your stuff in that situation.
Yeah.
But the rest of it just becomes, hey, you know what? Depending if you've got an adult child in the basement, we always say start off in the basement watching video games and not working. I mean, I think that's one of the extremes.
Right.
He or she might need to be Miyagi'd.
Right. And I love that phrase. So we're just going to use that from now on, being Miyagi'd.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we got permission from this particular woman and told her we were going to be using that. So if you're listening, you know who you are. Anyway, so that's just a story we wanted to tell tonight.
Yep.
If you have more questions about that, or you'd like us to go further deep into that idea or those thoughts, or you have opinions of your own, please feel free to email us or leave a note somewhere, wherever you leave notes. I'm completely technologically.
I take care of all the communication, and I tell Julia, hey, we have a listener that asked this. She goes, oh, really? Right. parentpivotpodcast@gmail.com is how you can email us.
Yes.
We're also on the social networks. We're on Instagram, Facebook. I think we're on TikTok.
I think we are.
But we don't do that. We don't do the posting. Our daughter does that. Our pregnant daughter does that. And those are all Parent Pivot Podcast at whatever that platform is. So we'd love to hear from you. And you know what? If you got nothing else to do after you listen to the podcast, go back and watch The Karate Kid.
There you go.
And
watch what Mr. Miyagi does.
Yeah. And maybe there's some tips there from Mr. Miyagi on, that's the other thing that came up a lot too in our workshop as I'm closing this podcast is asking good questions. And I think in that movie, Miyagi does that because it's not just do this for the sake of doing it. You need to do it and understand why you're doing it.
Exactly.
And it's a lot of times with our adult kids, rather than instructing them and telling them what to do, you have to guide them like a piece of bait that you're trying to put in front of your dog or whatever it is. Like, here's a cookie, and you're asking them questions so they can go, oh, and they get there themselves because I don't know. My opinion is today's universities, they don't teach kids to think for themselves anymore.
No,
They just indoctrinate
I think that
them.
starts with.
Sorry if I've
very
offended
young.
anybody, but that's just kind of my personal thoughts. It's not like,
Yeah.
it's not like it was when we were in school.
Yeah, it's a little different for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, go watch Karate Kid and then come back next week and join us for another edition of the Parent Pivot Podcast.
Bye.